Well, it's great to have you with me again today. As I promised you for this, my second season with the podcast, I was looking forward to having along some great guests for interview. Well, I am delighted to have along with me today Krystel Watts from Engaging Minds. And so welcome along to the Practice of Homeschooling, Krystel.
Thank you for having me, Sheena. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, it would be great if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your family before we get into things, and tell us about where you're located in New Zealand.
Okay, well, as we said, my name is Krystel Watts. I am a homeschooling mum of 8 children. My eldest is currently 20 with my youngest 2, almost 3. We have been doing this now for 15 years. And we are in the Hawara, which is in South Taranaki.
Yeah, a beautiful part of the country. And we have journeyed together a little bit here and there on our homeschooling journey. As you know, I've been 15 years as well. So we've been a pretty similar time frame. And our paths have sometimes weaved and crossed, even though we're, geographically far apart. But I think we've got some real shared interests and hearts for, homeschooling families around Aotearoa. So you're a busy homeschooling mum, but of course, you do something else. What is it that you even managed to fit around your family of 8 children?
My husband, Chris, and I run a curriculum-based business called Engaging Minds. We have been doing that now for, 9 years. I think we're coming up 9 years, full-time for the last 2. And it's just something we needed an extra business. We needed a little bit extra income. And when we bought it, it was very small. It was a hobby-based business. And essentially, we've built it up into our full-time income. We absolutely love it. It fit in around family. It fits in. It was what we knew. It was homeschooling. It was curriculum. And it just fit us perfectly. And it's grown. And we love it. We love being able to serve the homeschool community across New Zealand.
Amazing. I think that's what is so special about what you're doing with your business. You're not only making it work for your family, but you just have got such a love and a care for homeschooling families. You understand the journey, you understand the whole resource thing, and you're just really keen to serve. Yeah, I just think you've done so well in getting that mix, of business and serving. And I know that your heart really is for the best for homeschooling families and parents as they try and navigate this whole resources journey, which is what we're here for today. And so I've invited you along to kind of pick your brains a little bit, if that's okay. Because, this whole resource thing around homeschooling, it's always, a big part of decision making. And I know that some of the parents out there listening will be just thinking, how do you choose what to buy? It can just feel really overwhelming. So just wondering if you could tell us a bit about how, what is helpful for families to consider when they're thinking about how much money to spend on a child for curriculum. Where do they start with that?
All right, there's a couple of options. One, that's what I do. That's a lot of what you do. There's a few other people like Cynthia Hancock and Lisa McKenzie that do it as well. Talking to those that have been there, done that is a really good place to start. I always ask, the first thing I ask families, because obviously I get asked this a lot, is what style of homeschooling do you swing to? Swing to is the wrong word. What are you pulled towards? Most people are eclectic. About 90% of people are eclectic, and that means that they are a range, like a broad range of homeschooling styles. But even when you're eclectic, you will be drawn towards one or two. And that really, if you know that can really narrow down your options. So it's about, there are hundreds, if not thousands of home education curriculums out there, and we need to narrow that down. So that's the first question I ask, and that just starts to narrow that down. And then I will encourage families to borrow from friends or those within their homeschooling community. So you ask to borrow a curriculum. You need to really see it a lot of the time, or hit YouTube. There are thousands of clips on YouTube about what the curriculum is. There's flick throughs, there's reviews, all of those kind of things. Find a YouTuber that suits your style, that you actually enjoy listening to, and watch them. See if they have what you want. That's a good place to start. And then I tend to ask families things like, well, do you want online based learning? Do you want paper based learning? Because that then splits your option as well. Do you want a mix of the two? That's also okay. There's no wrong answer. Do you want to do the teaching as a parent, or do you want somebody else doing the teaching for you, whether that's in a co-op, whether that's online classes, or whether that's a video-based curriculum? That also narrows it down. And then the big one is, well, what's important to your family? What areas of education do you want to focus on as a family? What are your non-negotiables? What's super important to you? So there's no right answer. And there is no one, I always tell my families, there's no one golden curriculum. Families will tell you that online, that this is the best curriculum ever. Yeah. And what it is that's the best curriculum for them and in their current situation, for their family size, for their family situation, for their lifestyle. There's the perfect curriculum for you, but there's no one perfect curriculum.
Yeah, I think that's the key, isn't it? Is finding that fit and, figuring out that fit. That's just really helpful, Krystel. Thank you for giving some of those, specifics of where we can look. It's that research, isn't it? When I did my podcast episode on finding out, getting the exemption ready, the key is about research. We all want to just kind of have the filled in answers for the exemption. But the fact is, we have to, as home educating parents, go through that journey of exploring and researching and finding out. And of course, like you say, sometimes there's a little bit of, jiggling and figuring it out on the journey. But we can do a lot of research. Helps a lot, doesn't it, before we get to making a decision. And then the likelihood is we'll make a much better decision. In particular, I like that one you suggest, borrow it from others. Don't go straight on out and buy it.
Always. And Cynthia Hancock has a curriculum guide as well available. I always forget about that, but she has quite an extensive PDF guide available on her website as well.
Yes, indeed. I could put a link to that at the end of today's show so that people can get there easily. Definitely recommend that as well. Fantastic. Yeah. Now, I know that Engaging Minds, you are particularly good at providing really great customer support. And I think with our intro there, when you were saying how you just love serving the homeschooling community, and I've seen that in the way you correspond and in the newsletters that you have, and I just know your heart there. So what does it look like? How do you, provide that? What sort of support do you give homeschoolers when they're figuring out this research and the journey of what curriculum resources they might want to buy?
Okay, so a lot of that is just conversation, essentially, having conversations with homeschool mums. What is niche about what we do is Chris and I, we've got the experience behind us. So we're doing it. We're in the trenches. We're still homeschooling all of our kids. And we've gone right through with our older teenagers. So we've gone through the primary years. We've gone through the teen years, high school years. We also really pride ourselves in having good curriculum knowledge. So when we get a curriculum in, I try really hard to read the teacher's manual, to watch videos online, to really learn about it. We've spent the time on webinars about particular curriculums that we stock and all of that thing. So there's a lot of base knowledge that Chris and I have. Yeah. Also, a lot of what we sell I've also used. That's the best experience ever. I haven't used everything, unfortunately, but the ones that I have used for my own family, I do know really well. Sure. And so with that combined knowledge, we can then pick and match families, the correct curriculum for families for what they want. So when I'm talking on the phone, I'll ask families those questions that I sort of talked about before, and depending on the answers is what I'd recommend. Usually I can narrow curriculum down to about 3 different curriculums for, say, writing. Yes. depending on the age of the kids, what they want, and all those different factors, I'll be able to say, hey, these are my top 3 recommendations for what I think would suit your family based on my knowledge.
Yeah. That's fantastic. And you do some of that kind of, honing in and just kind of filtering things through because of your experience and your knowledge. And like, I don't know how you fit all of that in, seminars and reading and teachers' books. I mean, gosh, they can be quite overwhelming at first look, and you've touched in on so many of them. So, that's just an amazing commitment on your part. But we know, we hear your passion in that, Krystel, which and Chris as well, like the time and effort you put in that way to help homeschooling families. Now, something I've heard said is that you sometimes actually say to people not to buy resources. Like, you're a seller, you're a product-based business who's trying to put food on the table for your family. Yes. And actually, though, I do know that sometimes you say, no, don't buy that. Why? Even if it's something that, you have a resource that you sell, why do you sometimes say that to parents?
Because we've been there, done that, and I would hate for one of our resources to be sitting on somebody's shelf collecting dust just because they're like, oh, new shiny I want. And it's never to be used when that money can be used elsewhere. And I know parents look at me weird when I say, actually, you don't need half of what's in your cart. Let's narrow that down. And that comes from experience. I was a new homeschool mum once. I did it. I bought far too many resources, and I've ended up selling them on, or unfortunately lost money on them. And I don't want that to happen to somebody else. So if I can say, hey, actually, you don't need this, 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 and this, and this. You only need these 3 core things. And I'm going to save that family a couple of $100s that they can spend elsewhere. I'm going to do that. I would rather run my business with integrity and honesty than anything else. And that's just what we do.
Amazing. I think, that just you're just your real heart and genuine walking this path really shines through. I think that's the same. I can relate to what you're saying. Been there at the beginning. This looks good. This looks good. Oh, yeah, let's bring this in. Let's peel that. I've done that myself as well. I think we probably all do, and we keep trying to tell those that are maybe coming along behind us to just say, hey, just slow down. It's okay, and just add one thing at a time, rather than feeling like you got to get in the whole kit and caboodle. So I think that's great. The Engaging Minds, that's really your heart, is to help families be good stewards of money and resources that they have, and make good use of what they have. I mean, the resources that I've purchased from Engaging Minds, like, we're using them, and they've passed them along my various students in the family, and they're still being used, and that those are the best ones, right? That we're able to dig in and use. And sometimes something works for one child in the family, and then it doesn't for another.
100%.
Yes, but definitely, as long as we're making use of the stuff and it's not gathering dust on the shelves, which nobody wants, really. Hey,
no, and things can change. I think that's something that a lot of parents don't realize, is while you might have a fantastic curriculum and it's working for you for this 12-month period, we don't know what's going to happen in 12 months' time, and that another baby might come along, there might be a tragedy in the family, who knows, and then you might need to switch because of an outside circumstance. So I try to get families not to buy 3 or 4 years ahead, but just think the next 12, maybe 24 months ahead only, because who knows what's going to happen in the future, whether you'll need that curriculum. You might switch, you might use something else. So don't waste your money.
I don't. So you're saying avoid the stockpiling syndrome, which we can all have. We think like we're getting advanced or getting organized ahead of time, but actually it can just be stockpiling that we don't necessarily need to do. Just thinking though, as our students get older, would you say that as our kids get older towards that high school level, should we be buying more curriculum resources because they are now age 13, for example?
That depends. It depends on the family. I have witnessed families that have unschooled successfully through the teen years and not done any curriculum. It's difficult to do, and it takes a heck of a lot of commitment from the parent. So not necessarily. However, if you are going down an academic pathway, then yes, you do. The curriculum, it does unfortunately get more expensive, but that is due to the quantity and quality of the information that is in that resource. It takes a lot more to produce a high school level curriculum than it does a primary level curriculum. So they do tend to cost a little bit more. And those, especially the young teen years, so you're talking sort of 11 to 13-ish, you really want them to get that broad range of knowledge. Those are the years where you're not into the high academics yet. It's not make or break anything at all. And they've still got that love of learning and curiosity, so you want them to get a really broad range of info. But that doesn't also have to mean a curriculum either, necessarily. So that could come from documentaries, online classes, whatever.
Sure.
So it does depend. But we do stock a lot, and it does depend on the pathway chosen. So if you've got a high academic pathway or not.
Yeah. For sure. I think that's we've just come full circle. Hey, it's unique to every individual family. You know, your decisions are based on what works for your, situation, for your children, for your budget, for your lifestyle, all sorts of things. And these need to be considered rather than necessarily looking over our shoulders at the other homeschool family that we think have got it all together and they're the ones to emulate. As I've touched on in previous episodes, that comparison isn't helpful in the homeschooling space. But what is helpful is talking to people to get ideas and learning from that, but then also just making sure and looking at what are the needs of my family, my students, and maybe looking a little bit further towards what their pathway might be. Definitely need to be thinking about that into the high school years for what might be beyond school years and into further training or work or whatever, of course. So I'm going to be talking with a Future Pathways volunteer shortly, and so that's going to be good, talking to Kirsty Brewer next week. But just finishing off for today, it's been so, helpful to hear what you do at Engaging Minds, Krystel. And we've been so grateful to have you along today to talk a little bit more about that and why what you do is beneficial to lots of homeschooling families out there. Can you tell us where families can go for browsing and, discovering a bit more about curriculums? Where do they go and how do they get in touch with you if they have questions?
Thank you very much. So our website is www.engagingminds.co.nz. And we are on Facebook and on Instagram, more on Facebook. I tend to be, I'm still learning Instagram, I will admit. Email, our contact details are on our website, so email or phone call is the best way. And we are more than happy to just have that conversation with people and start to steer people in the right direction. It's what we do.
Fantastic. Well, the link for that will, of course, be in the show notes at the end of this. I think we'll finish things off today, Krystel, but I wonder if it might be helpful in future for us to have a conversation around some of those specific resource curriculums that you have, that we could dig in together a little bit more deeply about those ones that we have used, that we've experienced, that we could, give some of the listeners some more ideas to just check in and hear our journeys perhaps with that. Would you do that with me in the future?
I would love to. We could talk for hours. I would.
So we could. Well, it's been so great chatting today. Thank you so much for your time, Krystel, and thanks so much to Chris as well for giving you this little bit of time to come aside and have this conversation. And thanks so much for being on the Practice of Homeschooling today. We'll see you again. Bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye.